Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar.
And I'm Yuksen.
We are the chroniclers of all that was, all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this week we'll be looking into those short, hairy fellows that dwell around the galactic core, the Leagues of VOTANN.
Yes, these small individuals go by many names across the galaxy. Squats, Demiurge, Heliosi, Ancients, Craig, Grom, and Space Dwarves. But to the people of the Leagues, they are simply known as the Kin and the Iron Kin.
Right, Yuksen. And this month we'll be discussing how the Kin deal with the other species of the galaxy, as well as discussing their own personal views, combat doctrine, and technology.
Can't wait, Zeckthar. Well, where should we start?
Well, this week, Yuksen, I figure we could start back at the beginning, on how the Kin came into being.
You mean when they separated from humanity?
Yes, that would be the beginning. Kind of.
So they're similar to the Squats, those abhumans that have evolved from mining planets. But tell me, brother, how are they different?
Well, they're different from Squats, and one might say they are Xenos at this point, according to the Empire of Humanity. We would say they are a completely different species that now roams the galaxy.
Really? Well, how would you make that argument?
I'm glad you asked, Yuksen. You see, for my argument to make any sense, we have to go back to the beginning, or should I say, before the beginning of the Leagues. Now, it is possible that the Ancestor Corps retain a record of all Kin history since the earliest days.
And it's been one of our goals to study the Corps since its beginning. Honestly, Zeckthar, this wouldn't have been an issue if we had been in the galaxy during the conception of the League.
Quite right, Yuksen. If we had been here during that time, we could have observed how the League came into being ourselves. Too bad we were away helping a fellow chronicler ward off a vile group of insectoid species known as the Saranga.
Why? It took so long we were gone for at least 2,000 years.
Yes, but regardless, if such information survives in the Corps, it is likely buried beyond recovery. Even the thorough and practical Kin have been forced to accept that after a certain point, their ancient histories blur into myth and legend. Now, the Leagues of VOTANN are named in honor of Votann itself, who is also known variously as the Primal Ancestors, the Gilded One, or the Stone Mind, amongst others. In some Kin myths, Votann was not one being, but many, and is sometimes depicted as a group of gleaming golden figures, or a wheel of graven stone faces. In other myths, Votann fashioned the first crucibles, then raised the Kin up and sent them sailing into the dark void, before oceans of fire and flesh rose to swallow them. Some other myths speak of Votann as the eldest and wisest of the first ancestors, themselves little more than ill-defined, shadowy presences, and shown in many different forms in Kin depictions, both humanoid and otherwise, if they are depicted at all. Who is this Votann, you may ask? Well, it's simple. Votann is the ancestral Corps. What Votann was before it became a rare core remains a mystery lost to the ages. Yet, if you ask the Kin if that troubled them, they would emphatically say no. With typical pragmatism, the Kin accept that their myths are too contradictory and suspect to be cited as possessing a definite basis in fact. None of this troubles them overly. Steeped as they are in tradition and dour realism, the Kin feel less need than humans to don the armor of faith. They are not frightened by the inexplicable. Instead, they accept reality as they see it to be. If there are matters in their ancient past of which they have no understanding, then, unless those matters suddenly become relevant to their present, the Kin just put them aside. Of course, many of the Grimnir continue to interface with the ancestral Corps in hopes of asking the right questions to unlock portions of their ancient history. Most do this more out of simple curiosity and a desire for completeness. However, rather than being motivated by some existential need. Yet there are certain articles of lost history that all Kin deem indisputable fact. They call such things first truths. It is a first truth that the earliest ancestor departed the Kin homeworld, probably a pre-imperial Terra during the age of technology, and boarded fleets of interstellar generation ships known as Long March vessels. It is also a first truth that the Kin were a clone people from the beginning, and that the robotic ironkin have been with them since their earliest days. Another first truth is that the ancestors of the kin set out as miners, prospectors, and void dredgers, charged with exploiting the riches of the heavens. Kin myths blend into recorded history around the time their long march fleets were approaching the galactic core. Why they did not return to the heartlands of humanity's civilization at that time is unclear. From the fact that so many kin fleets plunged into the galactic core within a period of only a few Terran centuries, it might be inferred that a deliberate choice was actually made. Now, my question to you, dear brother, are those interesting creatures abhumans or xenos, according to the technical terms of Mkulu?
Must I always tell you, brother, quite on the name?
Nope, sorry.
Yeah. Well, if we wish to look at this analytically, we must look first and foremost at the squats, who still interact with the Imperium of Man.
So what is the difference, anyways, in your opinion, anyways, of the squats and the kin?
Well, first of all, one of the similarities is they both came from Earth, and they both left Earth before the Imperium actually took place. In the squat's case, we know this for a fact. They both set out to do mining, but the difference is that the squats ended up mining in places that had significantly larger amount of gravity, sometimes 2 to 3 times the amount that you would find on Earth. And as their populations grew, even the food that was sent to them by the people on Earth, it just wasn't keeping up with their population. So they started to have to grow some like algae and stuff, which that along with all the conditions that they were under sort of changed them into their diminutive, strong, compact form.
One might say even mutated them, correct?
Yeah.
Hence why they're known as abhumans.
Yes.
Like
Because they were human and then they slowly changed due to their environment
and the mutations that surrounded it. Like
Yeah.
much like there's a couple other abhumans, anyways, that are actually kind of interesting. Like for instance, the Ogren, I believe, are abhumans, correct?
And then there's also the ratlings.
I was going to say, who are the rat people? How did I not remember that name? The
They
ratlings.
aren't rat people.
I think they kind of are.
They're kind of like, for those who read fantasy, halflings.
Oh, okay. Well, why do they call them ratlings then?
Because calling them halflings would kind of make people think fantasy.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Okay, well, that's squats, but what about the kin? I mean, the kin obviously are very different, correct? I mean, they kind of look the same, but how they came to be extremely different.
They're different because, in comparison, theirs was a change that was made because, as mentioned before, they're clones. It's the process that is used to clone them that was changed, not the environment that changed them. And since they're clones instead, they're genetically changed from humans to this new form.
Okay, so does that mean anyways they were actually mutated into that form, or was it more along the lines of, I don't know, I guess the real question is that what's the difference between mutation and an actual Xenos? It's like, okay, so if we took, like, for instance, if you go to Terran 42, right? If you look far enough back in history, anyways, there was a particular singular, like, bear, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden we have nowadays, anyways, in Terran 42, you have like all sorts of different types of bears, right? And we call those different species. We don't think of them anyways as being mutated. We think of them anyways as being different species.
But they would still fall under the heading of bear.
Correct. So what are you saying is that you think anyways that the kin anyways are still should be considered abhuman as opposed to actually Xenos at this point?
Okay, because of the fact that it's up to debate whether or not they'd be considered human even for their beginning, since they were technically clones. The fact that on top of that, they've been genetically changed, not due to outer sources, but just changed due to coding. I would say that they'd probably lie in the Xenos category than mutation, in my opinion. Because mutation generally, if you think about it, it's either because of the environment or it's because you mixed it with something else, right? For example, gene stealer hybrids. Let's just go with that. Yeah, they become basically mutations because all of a sudden the Tyranid genes mix with human genes, so they'll all of a sudden have like a third arm or a natural neck or
Or like, for
whatever.
instance, the corruption of chaos.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, anyways, so here's actually the definition of mutation: the changing of the structure of gene, resulting in a variant from that may be transmitted to subsequent generations, caused by the alteration of a single base unit in DNA, or the deletion, insertion, or rearrangement of large sections of genes or chromosomes. So, with that definition, anyways, the definition makes it actually kind of hard, anyways, to determine whether or not the kin are actually abhuman or xenos at this point. They do have the same original species, correct? Humanity.
That's up to debate.
Well, yeah, that's
We assume that.
we kind of assume that because I mean they think anyways that they came from pre-imperial Terra, and the things that came out of Terra were humans. So I mean, honestly, anyways, I think I would probably gear more towards that that they're abhumans, but at the same time, it's never actually said anywhere, anyways, that they actually did.
They were, or that they actually were technically humans. The originals were humans to begin with.
Right. I mean, they could have been a different subspecies of something that lived there, anyways. And one of the reasons why they left was because all of a sudden these humans started to get a little bit more antsy about, aliens living amongst them. So, what should we mark this down as? Should we mark them down as abhuman or xenos, or unclassified?
I would lean towards xenos, but since it is a very highly questionable area, unclassified would probably be the safe bet.
Okay, fair enough. Real quick before we move on to the other people, anyways, that are part of the Leagues of Votann, which is the Iron Kin. Could you give us a brief description, anyways, of what the kin actually look like?
Okay, so the kin are known to be extremely hardy and resilient. This is thanks to their clone schemes, which are genetic templates that give the clone kin a variety of physical and spiritual abilities. They stand approximately around 4 feet tall, yet possess a very dense and skeletal structure that makes them about the same level of strength and durability that you'd find in a space marine.
Whoa, what? These guys, anyways, these little 4-foot tall people, anyways, are as strong as an Astartes?
Yeah.
Wow. And the Astartes get the help, anyways, of all that armor. No, sorry. That's just interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I never said with or without their armor.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, so you're saying the Space Marines are probably still beefier when they're in their armor.
Still, the fact that they are just as strong as even a Space Marine that isn't in armor is pretty strong.
I'd actually kind of like to see that, anyways, like on Nocturne. I know we just got done talking about the salamanders, but salamanders, they're sitting there, anyways, without their armor on, and they're like doing different competitions, anyways, of strength. And all of a sudden, this little twinkie guy that's about 4 feet tall comes up and goes, "Oh, I bet I could beat you in that." And all of a sudden, anyways, they actually have a mighty match between the midget and this giant space marine. It would be one for the ages. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead. Carry on.
So, anyways, their species also has a higher red and white blood cell count, which gives them incredible resilience to harmful environments. So, actually, probably one of them could survive on Nocturne.
Yeah. Probably do quite well. I wonder if they actually, on Nocturne, they actually hire out some, or if they've ever tried hiring out some of the kin to do some of the mining for them.
I can't really see the Nocturnians doing that.
Why not? Well, okay, yeah, they're just like, this is my planet. Fair enough.
This is my planet, and this is something that we do. It's our job. Not anybody else.
Out of here. Yeah,
so, as we've mentioned before, this race is a race of clones, and they do share the same basic genetic code. At the same time, they aren't exactly the same, but every kin is gestated and born under the watchful eye of The Votann from mechanical wombs known as crucibles. Other clone skins impart enhanced reaction times, infrared vision, or limited resistance to extreme temperatures, gravity, and radiation. Many clone skins manifest physically, whether it be unusually colored eyes or skin, craggy subdermal layers, chemical body odors, or various other giveaways.
So getting back to that whole Nocturnian thing, if you had one of these clones actually like born to do work anyways on Nocturne, they'd be like a little short black guy with red eyes, right?
Possibly.
Because they're designed anyways for their environment. So
Right.
So if you did anyways have that whole contest anyways of strength, it would be really weird because he'd just look like a really short Nocturnian.
Right.
Huh. So somebody, we should look that up. See if somebody's actually written something about that because that sounds
The
interesting.
unusually short Nocturnian. We don't know what clan he came from.
Well, even funnier.
Popped out of the ground one day.
Even funnier, anyways, if the Astartes are just like, this one definitely could go through the gene seed process, and he ends up becoming a salamander. That'd be interesting, but.
I don't think it'd really work out quite right.
Oh, you thinking that it wouldn't work anyways with the gene seed process?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one can hope. That'd be really fun. But anyways, could you tell us also about anyways the other people anyways that live in the Leagues of VOTANN? And I speak, of course, anyways of the Ironkin.
Well, in comparison to the Ironkin are basically the mechanical equivalent of them.
The robots, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're roughly the same shape, height, build, but each of them consists of a cerebral unit or CU, and it has microfield generators woven into its physical structure to make them nigh invulnerable. And then the body that it's given is based on whatever variety of societal role they will be doing, be it either as a generalist, a strategic advisor, combat shock trooper, cargo lugger, combat pilot, or a mine support unit, to name a few.
So they just kind of work hand in hand with the kin?
Yeah.
Okay. But they're robots. So
Right.
Who controls the robots? Because as we know anyways, robots anyways are programmed.
Yeah, which technically you can claim that in a way the kin were programmed also.
What do you mean?
Well, because the Votann, as we've mentioned before, basically are the ones that create the kin and the Iron Kin.
Right.
And so, depending on the situation, they add or subtract little tiny things to the kin to make them, as we mentioned before, more resilient to something or something to fit in one role more than another, which is kind of exactly the same thing that they're doing with the Iron Kin.
Yeah, but there's a huge difference between the two, though. One, anyways, okay, so the AIs, anyways, work significantly different, like, for instance, in people as opposed to robots or computers, right?
Right.
One's categorized, one, anyways, it just has a different process, anyways, on how it deals with things. There's a huge difference between the two. I mean, I understand what you're saying, anyways, is that they're I don't think that the programming, anyways, is the same, though. I don't think you can say that, anyways, that they can. I think that they can genetically alter them, like their bodies, anyways, when they pop out, but that kin is still going to have its own thoughts and ideas and stuff like that. The Iron Kin, on the other hand, anyways, it's controlled by the CU, anyways, that is designed, anyways, or programmed to function, anyways, within its commands, right?
In a way.
What do you mean, in a way?
Well, it's because, for example, they show these different roles, and one of them is being a generalist. In other words, they can kind of fit anywhere that they need to go. So, yeah, they may have certain things put into the programming, but that doesn't mean that they're exclusively for one particular role.
Oh, okay. Well, here's another question for you. If they've already got this thing, anyways, like if the Votann had already figured out how to genetically build this thing known as the kin, Why would they need the Ironkin? Or vice versa? Why is there two of them? If they function the same way anyways, why is there two of them? My argument for that would be they don't function the same way. One's a robot, the other one is a self-aware sentient being. So while you can go on with this whole concept, the Ironkin really, or they're not slaves. Everybody says they're not slaves, anyways, to the kin, but at the same time, they're there to follow orders. That's their programming.
Well, and to technically give orders in some cases.
Okay, but yeah, in rare cases, sure, but at the same time, I mean, it's saying this doesn't make any sense.
Well, blame the Votann. They're the ones that do everything.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, this is an ancestral.
They create the Ironkin and they create the kin.
So
it's all their fault.
Well, why would you have
Actually, it's the people who created the Votann to begin with. It's their fault.
Well, no, that actually makes sense. It makes a little bit more sense. The people that created the Votann, anyways, they set up this structure, right?
Yeah.
So if they did anyways, I mean, yeah, they might be just kind of like, hey, we got to treat these robots anyways like normal people. Because let's face it, none of you guys are normal people. You're not birthed. You come out of a cryo chamber. So, or not, what do they call it? Crucible. You come out of a crucible, as opposed to the Ironkin anyways that are built. But at the same time, anyways, I mean, who knows? Maybe they knew anyways that, especially if they're coming from pre-Imperial Terra. So just out of curiosity, Yuksen, do you know much anyways about the age of technology?
Not a lot.
Okay, so during the age of technology, mankind built all this great technological stuff. And eventually what happened is that they ended up building these robots that pretty much did everything that they wanted them to do. And then eventually they built an AI system that was so strong that it looked at these humans and said, well, we don't need them. So then they started exterminating the humans. The humans had a problem with that. They ended up crushing the robots, but through that whole thing anyways, that's pretty much the basis of this. So I'm wondering anyways that when Votann jetted out, the concept was maybe they were afraid anyways that the Ironkin anyways would have the same problems unless they had built structures in to make sure anyways that the kin never actually ever treated them anyways of something less other than themselves. That's the only thing I can possibly think of.
Or it could have been before that, and they just went, I wonder, what would happen? Because, there's got to be that one scientist out there who's like, I wonder what would happen. Let's see what will happen if we take the robot one and the flesh one and have them both basically go on the same journey. What will happen over time? And then just forgot or died for some reason.
Okay, so the problem with that, though, is that it, as we've already discussed, is programmed into the Votann or the ancestral cores anyways. These two things continue to function the way that they have. But then again, that also begs the other question anyways. This is also yet another giant AI. It's following programming. Maybe they're just like, well, we'll check back on them anyways in 500 years, and maybe we'll have to change the program, maybe not. And then all the robots took over on Terra, and then they just forgot about it. Fair enough. It's a good point.
Or they lost track of the Votann.
I mean, I really wish that we had been here for that.
Yeah.
We were stuck anyways helping the person that should not be named anyways, one of our chroniclers that was subjected by him anyways in a different universe, and we missed like a huge chunk of this one. Well, maybe we should write a stern letter to Kronos, letting him know anyways how upset we are anyways about this whole situation, and he needs to come down here anyways and help us anyways figure this out. I digress. Is there anything else you can tell us about the League of Votann? Perhaps, I mean, we've been talking about their structure. How does their actual society work?
Okay, so basically you can break them down to the following. You have the kin, the individuals, then you can expand out to basically the extension of their community to the their extended familial and biological groupings, which are known as kindreds, and they can go from being like 100 to thousands.
Huh. So they're kind of like on Terran 42 anyways, like Scottish clans.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of related, but they're not, all from one particular group of people.
Right.
Huh.
And the kindreds dwell in holds, which can either be on a planet or they could be on a ship.
Huh.
Which generally look quite a bit different from each other, be it structure, size, and of course locations. Each one of these kindreds, though, has a ruling council known as the Heathspake, and nearly all of the kindreds in their holds end up pledging their allegiance to a league.
So what's a league?
And these leagues make up the Leagues of VOTANN.
Right. So what's a league?
Hence their name.
Yuksen. What is a league?
It is explained just a little bit ago. It is a group of kindreds together.
That's it? There's no like we believe in this particular thing, so we all kind of come together on this particular faction, or we like mining this stuff, so therefore anyways we come together on this faction. It's just randomly a bunch of them got together, a bunch of kindreds, and said, yeah, okay, we'll team up.
It's like
that's how it works.
They went, you know what? I like what these people believe in. I'm going to join this group, or I'm going to join that group, or these guys are close to our place, so it might be best to join up with that group.
Okay, so what you're saying is that a league is literally a kindred. It's just a bunch of different kindreds. So it just kind of moves up from kin to kindred to leagues.
Right.
That's it? Wow. Okay. All right.
Mind you, this is excluding all the outliers like the freelance people and
who are the
kindreds that don't give a rip about anybody else. They just want to keep to themselves.
Who are these guys? I mean, how I said, who are these guys? I don't know how do they affect anyways the Leagues of VOTANN?
They generally don't that much. They're just outliers.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry for interrupting. Carry on. Carry on. These people are nuts. All right, carry on.
Now, mind you, at the heart of every one of these leagues is a Votann ancestor core, venerable thinking machine created long ago and placed aboard the first kin mining fleets. These are the things we've been talking about off and on.
Right.
That we think are screwed up. So, well, more than think. We're pretty sure they're screwed up.
Okay.
Another important aspect of Votann society are the guilds. The guilds are united bodies of kin who perform a particular role or service, and they're just put together generally. It's kind of like when you think of a guild, for example. In fantasy, you have the adventure guild. All these people have to pay to be inside of it, but they get their jobs there. You get what I'm going for here on what a guild is?
Sure. So for them anyways, it's more like, well, for like the leagues anyways, it's more like mining and exploring and probably fighting too. Somewhere in there.
And probably plumbing and smithing.
Plumbing?
And, yeah.
So we now have a space plumbers. Great.
Yeah.
Jeez. Is one of them by any chance anyways named Mario with his buddy Luigi?
No.
And they fight the terrible space lizard. Sorry, carry on.
Anyways. Okay. And since this is basically what guilds are, they technically exist outside of kindreds and leagues, but they also can tend to overlap on the smaller levels, which kind of makes sense because, it might be only like 2 people are blacksmiths in this kindred, and so you really can't have a guild with only 2 people. But this kindred over here has like 30 blacksmiths. It's like, okay.
Okay.
And if a guild is prominent enough, they will be their guild master will be a member of the Heathspake, which isn't just guild masters, but it's also We have the senior officers of the military and the Grimnir. So they aren't something that's powerful enough that they'd overrun leagues because they're just focused on certain aspects instead of it just being we cover everything.
Why not? Why haven't the guilds taken over? That would make so much more sense if the guilds did take over. And they're the ones that actually control the leagues. Why haven't they?
Because the guilds focused on different particular roles, whereas leagues can cross amongst many different roles.
Right. No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that why haven't the guilds taken over the leagues, and therefore the guilds are the leagues, so to speak?
Okay, putting it a different way. Basically, a league is almost like its own country.
Okay.
So, taken from that look, can you actually see a guild technically running an entire country?
Yes.
When the guild isn't in control of everybody in that country. Why do you think?
What?
Why do you think that they weren't up by now?
Me personally? I don't know why. That's why I'm asking the question. To me, anyways, it seems fairly obvious that the guild should be running these things, but they aren't. So, is there like a stopper for the guilds, anyways? Is like you can't pass this far, and if you do, anyways, all the leagues, anyways, they rain righteous fury down on you, and you just become absolved, or
The fact that they aren't in charge of the military might,
so there's no guilds
be
that
a
have anything to do
factor.
with the military.
Kindreds have their own militaries. So I assume there are guilds that are like, okay, this is a guild that has dogs of war.
Oh, okay, or combatants,
Combatants.
mercenaries.
Yeah.
Right.
But they aren't actually part of the Kindred's military itself.
Right. It also could be, anyways, just a simple concept of what the kin actually think, and they're just their structures. I mean, I'm talking about, like, for instance, in Terran 42, anyways, I'm talking about humanity. And if you look over, anyways, into the Imperium in our world or in our galaxy, you can see why my questions make sense with humanity. But maybe that's another argument of why the kin or the Leagues of Votann are really actually Xenos, because they think so much differently than humanity. And I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing here. What do you think?
That would be actually a very good thought process of going through. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, do you want me to go ahead and mention here, anyways, what they how you've described, anyways, their structure, but I can give you, anyways, what their beliefs are. This might actually help, anyways, our question here.
Sure.
Okay. And mind you, anyways, when I'm done describing this, anyways, maybe we can go back to this question. Well, the Leagues of Votann follow a concept of spiritual guidance that rings true throughout their whole culture.
Must you add your sad jokes to our chronicling?
My apologies, brother. I just couldn't resist. The kin are a conservative race, and there are certain understandings they have found universally acceptable amongst them. The kin call these their truths. You can see what I did there. And that's why the joke was there. Anyways, moving on. And treat them as articles of sincere good sense that are loaded with more nuance and meaning than is immediately apparent.
Are the truths law?
Well, technically, no. They treat those truths as moral compasses, though, much like the biblical terms on Terran 42, like do unto others as you would have done unto you.
Yes, if I recall, that is in the book of Luke, chapter 6, verse 3. What's your point?
Well, as a compass points north, sometimes one must go south. While it's a great moral compass to center your life on, there are times where repercussions require you to act accordingly, such as if someone steals from you, they should pay for it. Even if you yourself, anyways, would rather just have mercy and be like, my man, and just leave. The Votann use such truths in the same concept, moral principles, yet they're not really actually laws.
Ah, I see your point, but my apologies. Please continue.
Thank you. The most common of these is the frequent truth, the ancestors are watching, which often doubles as a battle cry. One interpretation of this truth is that all the generations who have gone before are judging the deeds of the living kin, who must strive their hardest to live up to those who came before them. Yet equally, this truth can remind the kin that their ancestors live on in every new generation, because remember, they're clones, and that they are never alone while their forebears stand with them. There are many other truths, like sailing to far space. This is an expression describing an endeavor, strategic maneuver, or the like, which appears foolhardy, like far space, which is anywhere outside the primary league's territories in the galactic core. And it's considered risky and unwise to stray into it without, good cause.
Or their hearth burns, referencing the hearth, the power source that blazes at the heart of every kinhold. This expression implies that an individual has become especially impassioned or angry, or else an unquenchable energy or drive towards a particular goal. And its kin, an expression used to indicate something is of or belonging to the kin as a race, and therefore inherently durable and reliable.
Precisely, Yuksen. Now, the kin rely on more than just their moral compass with the truths. The rest of their culture is based on 4 pillars. The first is called the hearth, the fire that burns at the heart of the hold, echoing the times when all kin sailed the stars aboard vast generation ships. The hearth is a blazing plasma reactor that powers the hold's defenses and sustains life and light. Its fires are said to burn within the breast of all its kin, only extinguished if every last member of the kindred falls. The second pillar is the forge, wherein the kindred, known as Brokir, craft the weapons, equipment, tools, vehicles, and technologies required to sustain them. In planet-based holds, the forge may be a conventional, if vast, industrial workshop, but in others it may take the form of a huge factory vessel, a hollowed-out industrial asteroid, or a grav-anchored factory station. The third planet is the Fane, tended to by living ancestors. From the Fane flows the wisdom of the VOTANN, for it is here that the Grimnir interface with the kindred's ancestor core. The final pillar is the Crucible, whose genomic cloning technologies and artificial wombs ensure that the kindred's continuation as a people, and whose ancient devices are defended by oath-sworn orders of the Imbir. Now, Yuksen, I know we have mentioned a couple of times we are not theologians, but historians. Yet we must discuss the concept that these small folk follow a very spiritual aspect that balances faith, tradition, and practicality. So what are your thoughts? Now, before we get into that, though, before you answer my question on that, does this give us any more balance anyways as to why the guilds actually haven't taken over?
Really, the only thing that I can think that after hearing this is basically because they have these faiths and traditions, it falls in line that the guilds do not try to run everything. Because, for example, one of them's focused around the forge, and that would be something
Right.
that the guild would be more focused on than the Fane.
Yeah. And okay. So I think you're right there. I think that the whole concept of their faith and the way that they actually follow it anyways precedes anyways the aspect of just trying to conquer their own people.
Also, if you think about it, since they have the kindreds have those ruling councils called Heathspake, if you notice what they are, is they're made up of military officers, guild masters, and then Grimnir.
Right.
It sort of shows you that the guilds are more of the financial. Yeah, them as the
Right.
financial, military as the military, and then the Grimnir as basically
The leaders of the people.
the leaders of the people,
Mm-hmm.
or one of the leaders of the people, since the guilds kind of are also.
Which goes back to our same question, unfortunately. But still.
The guild also goes with the people, but the Grimnir are more of, okay, this is the wisdom that we can gather from the Fane or from the viewpoints, almost like the religious leader. Not
So
quite, but
okay.
similar to that. Basically, it goes you have the finance, the religious, and the militant, is basically the way that you can see it kind of all being rolled together, basically.
They completely eliminated the whole aspect of the political. That's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, technically, the Grimnir would be the closest you could get to political.
Right, right. Well,
Well,
anyways,
technically, it is all political, but they are more, they don't have their own political agendas. Put it
right,
that way.
right.
Theirs is truly a
They're
ruling
centered.
aspect of this is how we feel would be the best way to progress.
Right. Well, we've only got a little bit of time left, but we do have to actually go over this. I think it's actually probably the most important part of the Leagues of VOTANN, and that is what the leagues think of the rest of the Milky Way and the species that live in them. I think we can both agree, anyways, that out of all the races that live in the Milky Way, they hate the orcs the most.
Yeah. Which is similar to the squats because they also really hate the orcs. But
We're going back to our old questions, but we're not doing that this time. We're moving on. It's just because of the whole, honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with the chaotic nature of orcs, and all they do is they just war. There's nothing else to them. There is no concept of trade. There is no concept of mining or technology. It is just we're here to kick butts and take names. I mean, that's
right.
what the orcs do. What do you think they think of the Tyranids?
The Tyranids, I believe that they don't like them and they're something that should be hunted down and killed. But that's more of sort of a hunter's aspect instead of they should be exterminated due to them destroying everything. It's more of, well, I should say terminated to just remove something that's really obnoxious. It's more of we should eliminate them when they come by, either to get resources from them or just so that they don't consume
Where
us.
they're from, yeah. I mean, from what I've heard described, anyways, they think of the Tyranids, anyways, as like a giant beast that kind of eats everything in its path. So you should just be wary of it. But if you have the ability, it's kind of like, anyways, like the Native Americans in Terran 42. Anyways, we normally leave bears alone, but
Yeah.
if we could kill one, we got a lot of food there, and we've got a lot of fur, and so sometimes they do prey upon the Tyranids, but normally they just kind of try to give them wide berth. Kind of like what you were just saying. What about okay? So, if you don't mind, I'm going to take this one. The Necron.
Okay.
So the Necrons, anyways, they don't like the Necrons either. But this, I don't think this is really the Necrons' fault. Now, hear me out on this. The only times they really actually come into contact with the Necrons is when they start mining a particular planet and the Necrons happen to be there. And then all of a sudden they show up, anyways, in the giant tombs, anyways, of the Necrons, and all of a sudden the Necrons start waking up and they're just like, what are you doing? You're eating our planet. Go away. and not necessarily go away, more along the lines of, we're going to keep killing you until you're gone. Which, I mean, I can understand the Necron's side of this, but I can also understand, anyways, why the leagues don't like him either.
Right.
What are your thoughts on them?
No, I agree with you on that. Yeah, it's like you wouldn't want somebody to break into your house and just go, "Hi there." You'd rather have them, booted.
Or more emphatically, anyways, someone breaks in your house and they're stealing stuff, and you're like, excuse me, and they look at you anyways, and they're just like, this is mine, and you go, no, it's mine. You need to leave now. In fact, okay, so the Necrons do take it a little bit farther. Instead of you need to leave now, they're just like, well, if we kill you.
What are you doing? Taking your stuff. Okay, hold on a sec. I'll grab my shotgun.
Exactly. Now, I know they don't like these guys either, anyways, the Drukhari. But
yeah, the slavers, yeah. And they're slavers and tormentors.
It falls back on the same concept as the orcs with the Dark Eldar or the Drukhari. It's just it doesn't make any sense to them why they do what they do. There is no negotiations. There's no even trying to figure out what they do because they're monsters. They will just come and take your stuff, and you personally anyways, and as slavers, like you said. And it's just they're so confused about them because they see this giant as opposed to the orcs. Okay, so the orcs anyways, when you're talking about the dark Eldar and the orcs, there's a huge gap in technology there, right?
Yeah.
So with the Drukhari, it's like it's this advanced technology. So they've obviously, anyways, built a society, anyways, and they have this great technology. Oh, this is the way the Votann look at it, at least I would assume. And yet they're still, anyways, just like these pirates and slavers. It doesn't make any sense to them, as opposed to the orcs, anyways. It's like, well, we can understand them. They're just barbarians.
Well, I think, for example, not just the Drukhari, but the rest of them, but immediately the Drukhari, because the normal aspect that you can see when it comes to the Votann is they're like, you don't step on our toes, we won't step on yours. We're willing to maybe do deals with you and stuff, maybe not. But otherwise, if you step on ours, it's not going to go well. And let's face it, the Drukhari are constantly stepping on people's toes, to say it kindly. And so that's pretty much just been widespread, probably amongst all of the Votann. So they already have this viewpoint of, yeah, we aren't dealing with.
Which does actually give me actually kind of an interesting question. What do you think, anyways, that the Votann think of, or sorry, the Leagues of VOTANN, the Eldar or the Eldari, not the Drukhari. I mean, we've already established that because they're two separate races at this point. So,
Yeah.
what do you think they think of, anyways, of the Eldari?
Well, similar to what I mentioned before, they sort of have this neutrality to them, but since there hasn't been much interaction with the Eldari, there really hasn't been much conflict between the two. I don't really see them trading much with each other because I don't see anything they would really want to trade with each other.
All right, that's a good point.
It's not like the Eldari can have anything that the Votann really want.
Well, oh yeah, you got a good point because I mean, one of the things that the Eldar are really well known for is their abilities to master the warp. Which, go ahead.
The Votann don't do. So.
Yeah, they hate psychers. But and at the same time, anyways, if you're looking at like technology wise, the Eldar probably don't need anything from the League because they're so much more advanced.
The Eldar are still using Triton catapults. They don't feel that they need to advance in technology, which is kind of a sad statement.
It's okay. Eldar technology is really weird, and we will get to it, get into it anyways when we get to the Eldar. The Eldar technology it's the best way to describe it is it's super advanced, yet really backwards. Would you agree, Yuksen? I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
It's more like it's hard for me to put it into words. We'll just go with that.
Okay. Well, just to give a heads up for all of you fine listeners, anyways, my mini boxes that I found that you guys so love so much, anyways, I'm going to continue doing them anyways this next month, and I'm going to be talking about some minor characters throughout the Eldar and the Dark Eldar, 2 for each. The Eldar, though, you might find interesting because both of them, anyways, actually tie into another race that we've already discussed, the Necrons. So if you want to listen, feel free. They'll be posted up soon. What about humanity? I mean, humanity has had the most contact probably with the Leagues of VOTANN than anybody else other than the last Xenos characters that we are going to be talking about here in a few minutes. But
humanity, it's kind of a hate-love relationship because, in some cases, it's just like, cool, we'll trade with you. Awesome. We can both benefit from it. In other cases, you have people who are just like, it's Xenos. It must die. Kind of like
Black Templar.
They must die.
Inquisition. sorry. A little bit
some Inquisitors.
But yeah, it's. I think a lot of humanity actually just looks at them anyways as far going squats, right?
I assume that many of the Imperium see them as squats and mistake them as squats, even though they aren't the same, as we've discussed before.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with you anyways with humanity. But now we do have one last, we're running out of time here, but we do have one last Xenos empire that we do need to discuss, and that would be the Tau.
Yeah, for the Tau, they've actually done quite a bit of trading with them. They actually do not, once again, they don't have a negative or positive impact. I mean, they don't view them as like great allies or great enemies. I mean, there have been conflicts between the two because, the Tau sometimes encroach on their territory and they go, nope, you are not.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do think, anyways, out of all the races, the League seem to be a little bit more friendly with the Tau. And here's my reasoning why. There's a couple reasons. First off, anyways, they've traded off some technologies so that, like, for instance, the reason why the Tau have ionized weapons is because they actually traded with the Leagues to get said weapons. Another thing is that you mentioned earlier, anyways, the Demurg. That's actually a name, anyways, describing the Leagues by the Tau. And it's actually also a league all of its own that seems to be quite friendly with the Tau. Now, the concept of whether or not they've actually joined the greater good, as the space commies would call it, is less than determined, but it seems that they are very friendly with the Tau and they actually fight with the Tau a lot of times. If that is, it's still undetermined whether or not it's because they want their own unique goals, like they're mercenaries, or if it's just like, yeah, we've kind of gotten away from the Leagues and we're joining you guys. The League actually of the Demurgan is actually fairly interesting, and we might go into that later. But I hate to say it, Yuksen, but while this has been fun and most interesting, our time is up.
True, brother. But join us next time when we discuss the League's technology as well as the weaponry.
Yes, quite right, brother. And while we have had fun this week, I wish to talk about something a little bit more serious.
Like what?
Well, Bill, could you cue the music? Oh, thank you.
Hey, where's that music coming from? Bill? Bill?
Last week, we lost a good friend, B.O.B., also known as Bob, due to an unforeseen accident with a flamethrower.
Yes, very unfortunate accident.
Truly tragic, Yuksen. Yet all is not lost.
Huh?
Yes, good news. Bob has a couple beeps left in him. And with your support, we can fix Bob.
I don't think we can. Will you cut that music out, Bill?
What's wrong, Yuksen? I thought you wouldn't be all about fixing Bob. You know, our trusty android that you accidentally barbecued on our last Vox.
Well, of course I would love that. But I roasted him pretty well. I mean, he caught that unfortunate blast from Suture's breath. He should be done for.
But he wasn't. The scrappy little robot held on. And I figured we could help Bob out by fixing him. And we need your support. If you could donate to Bob's well-being, then just click the support button on your podcast. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us at www.asheraka.com.
Yeah, that's www.asharaka.com.
Quite right, Yuksen. And feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Until next week, this is Zeckthar.
And Yuksen, signing off.